Okay, so 3.4 is what's called standard form. So there's kind of two different ways that this week's going to be largely on graphing. So two different forms that we use predominantly, standard form and slope-intercept form. So standard form looks like that, where the A and the B and the C are integers. So remember, that means positive or negative whole numbers. So the one kind of nice thing about standard form is that we don't have fractions. Okay, so so there's a standard form equation. Okay, and so some of the problems, well, almost all the problems, but we're going to be dealing with x and y intercepts. So before we look at this problem, let's come over here. So x-intercept would just mean like a point on the x-axis. So here's like, 3 of them. But what they all have in common, so like let's say that's like 2, 0. And then this one would be negative 1, 0. And this one would be negative 3, 0. So if you notice, they all have 0 for the y part of the coordinate. Okay, so an x-intercept the y value is 0. So then for a y-intercept, again, it's just all these points, wherever they happen to be, on the y-axis. So this one is 0, 3, this one would be 0, 1, 0, negative 2, 0, negative 5. So as you can see, all those x numbers, so for a y-intercept, the x value is 0. So some of your problems today, it will ask you to find the x and y intercept. You don't have to graph it, you're just, what's the x and y intercept? So for the x-intercept, the y part needs to be 0. So in the problem, I put 0 in for the y part. And what happens is I get 4 times 0 is 0. 2x plus 0 is just 2x. And so the x part equals 6. So I created a coordinate where the x part was 6 and the y part was 0. Okay, and then I do the opposite for the y part. So for the y-intercept, I put 0 for x, just like it says over here. And I get 0 plus 4y and 0 plus anything is the anything. And again, I've created a coordinate where the x part is 0 and the y part is 3. So sometimes the book, when it asks you to find the intercepts, it'll say x equals 6 or 6, 0 or y equals 3 or 0, 3. Okay, but the big thing is do not combine them together. That's the most common mistake that I see, is where they say, oh, x is 6 and y is 3, and you write it as a coordinate like this. Okay, don't do that. That's not right. Okay, so just find the x and y intercepts. Plug in the numbers. Okay. Then you'll have another set of problems where it will say use intercepts to graph. So so if that was our problem, so I'm basically gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna plug in 0 for x. Don't forget the negative sign. So here's the other thing that happens. This part that's 0 just goes away. And we get y is negative 3. So I'm going to graph a line. And I figured out that the y part of this line is going to cross the y-axis at negative 3. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing but I'm going to plug in 0 for y. So remember, this part right here, it just goes away. And then I get x is 2. So on the x-axis, it crosses at 2. And just connect the dots for your line. Okay. So one set of problems, it just like you would stop right here and be done. And then the next set of problems, you'll actually just put them on a graph and connect the dots. Okay, this other standard form is like x equals 2 with no y part, or y equal 3 with no x part. These are both considered standard form. Okay, and to graph them is actually really simple. So it just means on the x-axis, remember x is always the side-to-side one, but on the x-axis go to 2, and the line is just a vertical line. Okay, and the reason behind that is every point, just like every point on a y-intercept had a 0 and on the x-intercept had a 0, every point on this line So if this point up here was 2, 5, and this point here is 2, 2, and this one is 2, negative 1, and this one is 2, negative 3. All the x numbers are 2. Okay, so on the x-axis, go to 2. It's always a vertical line. Okay, it's up and down. So, kind of the same thing for the y one. On the y-axis, go to 3. And instead of a vertical line, it's a horizontal line. Kind of for the same reason. You know, all these points this one is negative 4, 3. This one is 2, 3. This one is 4, 3. All the y numbers are 3. Okay, so a y equal line is horizontal or side to side. Okay, so your first group of problems will actually be these, where it's either x equal or y equal. Then you'll do some where you find the x and y intercept, you don't have to graph, and then the last group of problems you find the x or y intercept and you do have to graph. If you get like 2.5, then just estimate it 2.5. Okay, it doesn't. It's okay to get like some partial values. All right. Okay. So complete the assignment. Watch, rewatch the video at any point if you need to, and we will see you tomorrow.